If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Listeners, I'm excited to share some good news. Podcast Connections is our brand new episode sponsor. If you feel your book deserves more reach but visibility hasn't come easily, podcast guesting can open the right doors. The team at Podcast Connections gets you in front of the audiences who need your message and your expertise. If podcast guesting is something you're interested in, please contact them at podcastconnections.co and tell them you heard about them on the Book Marketing Mentors podcast. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Kristin Bentley. She's the founder and CEO of EP House, a boutique publishing company devoted to books that create real-world impact. With over 25 years of experience, she guides aspiring authors, leaders, and changemakers through the process of turning lived experience into meaningful manuscripts. Kristin believes writing a book isn't about being ready, it's about willingness, structure, and the courage to begin before clarity arrives. Kristin, what a pleasure it is to welcome you to the show, and thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Thank you for having me on.
You talk about why ready is a lie for nonfiction authors. I really like that. What exactly do you mean?
The word ready is something that we often believe is a preparation. It's a line of events that we need to do before we start the action. But the truth is, if we wait until we are ready to write our book, we stay stuck. There is no movement forward. The word ready is an actual action word. We have to begin by just doing it.
That's so true. I mean, the number of times I'm thinking, I'm not ready to do this, but you've got to take that first step because otherwise, as you say, you're always preparing and you're never actually getting there.
Absolutely. And because of the process of writing, it's through the actual action that we end up coming up with the messages for the book. The ideas come after we begin, not before.
So why do you think so many sort of smart, capable people wait to feel confident about writing instead of letting the writing build that confidence?
I think the majority of people who write a certain type of book, so when we think of nonfiction books, yes, there are memoirs. However, the majority of nonfiction books are not in that genre. They're professional books, they're personal development books. And when we look at the demographic of people who write these books, they are high achieving professionals. And there's a certain way that they operate on a daily basis in their business. We often take that model and apply it to everything that we do, to include how we write a book.
Talk more about that. That's an interesting concept.
We start with the outline, right? So high achieving authors are going to start with creating an outline. They're going to create the structure. They're going to create the bullet points and all of the topics that they're going to be talking about in the book. Now, having that model, having that structure is an okay thing to have because it does give you an idea of what the book is going to be about. But if we spend our time rewriting and editing and changing that outline, we're never going to get past the outline into the actual writing.
I think I might have shared this with you before, but when I wrote both dummies books, I've written 2 dummies books, I've written a For Idiots guidebook, and the rule when you're working with both Wiley and Penguin is that you write the table of contents first. And the table of contents is so in depth. I mean, any of the listeners, if you've looked at a dummies book, look at those pages of contents. There's like 10 pages of content, and it goes into depth of everything is covered in each chapter. And I thought when I first did this, I was like, this is a pain. I just want to get in and start writing, and they don't want that. They want that. So what you're doing is you're building that skeleton, that outline, and then it's so much easier to put the meat on the bones. I don't know if that's, when you talk about an outline, how in depth you think about an outline, but this is an extreme, I know.
It is, and it's good to have that structure before you begin, because otherwise you're going to end up taking all these extra side streets that have nothing to do with what the book is about, right? It gets chaotic, it's unorganized, there's no flow, there's no sense. So it's really important to have those outlines because they keep you on task. However, at the same time, they also have the potential of putting you into a box that prevents innovation, that prevents movement of idea and thought. Because the truth is, once we start writing, the idea of what our book is going to be about, it evolves once we're actually in the writing process.
It's so true because I've got a dear friend who always says there's no such thing as a writer's block. You just start writing. I was like, oh, yes, I've been through those situations where I sit there and looking at the screen or a blank piece of paper and nothing's happening. I just start off. I don't know what to write, but if I did know, what would it be about? And somehow then I look out and pick an object, or maybe look out into the garden, or I see a bird and I start writing about that. And all of a sudden, one idea stems to another one, another one, another one. It sort of feeds that. Have you found that?
I have, absolutely. And when we think of writer's block, just to kind of back up a few steps to go back to that, writer's block shows up for 3 different reasons. This is what I have at least found to be true. And the 3 reasons are there's the imposter syndrome, there's the fear of vulnerability, because the truth is, even when you're writing a professional book, there's a part of you that goes into it. There's part of your story. And the other piece is the overwhelm. You're absolutely right. There's a statistic out there that states if we sit down and consistently write for 45 minutes, we're going to be able to get past that inner critic, that inner voice. The words will start to flow and we meet less resistance. If we can write for more than 15 minutes, from the 16-minute to the 45 is when we find our productivity point. So if you're having that moment of being stuck, you have to keep writing for that full 45 minutes and it'll still be productive, as you just said.
It's funny because when I wrote my first book, I mean, it was something that was suggested to me as a way to build credibility. I had no inkling that I was going to write one. It was the furthest thing from my mind. But when I asked for direction with my business, this man of wisdom said to me, write a book. And I set myself a goal that every night I would write at least 2 pages. And I couldn't move until I had written those 2 pages. I had a sign above my desk that said bum glue. I was glued to my seat. And some days it was painful to write. And other days, I could write more than 2 pages, but my minimum was 2. Had you ever thought of that kind of an exercise?
Yes, that's really kind of, it falls in the same thread, doesn't it? It's a matter of just committing to some type of movement forward. I tell my authors that there are going to be days when the words are not flowing. Perhaps on those days, create a list, make bullet points, go back to the outline and consider whether anything needs to be shifted or changed. As long as you're making some movement forward in the writing of your book, it's still movement forward.
What's coming to mind now, and I hadn't thought about asking this for you, but it just came in. I was like, okay, so where does AI come into this?
Ooh, I love that you're asking that question because specifically folks that are looking to write a book don't really know what the benefits are to that, the ethics that are to that, if you will. The truth is some of my authors that I'm working with use AI to assist them with creating flow and putting the ideas together. AI can work as a wonderful tool to help you brainstorm. If you're looking to put your outline together, it can expand upon that outline. I think using AI as a tool is incredibly beneficial, but also having an understanding that you're the one that needs to guide it. They need to come from your ideas in order for it to create the benefits and the results that you're looking for.
I love that you said that, and you said it so beautifully. Yes, it is a tool. I mean, that's how I love to use it. Yeah, expanding on something that I might not have considered because it isn't married to anything that I say or type in there. Yes, it just expands that and gives you other opportunities. And I love comparing other things that are unrelated to my subject and finding out what's the connection between, let's say, a banana and book marketing. I just pulled that out of my head. But chat will come up with something.
Mm-hmm. It'll share a quote from somewhere that triggers a thought. And that's really what it comes back down to, is that they're still your thoughts. They're still your ideas. The AI is just guiding you maybe in a different way. That again, it goes back to that space of innovation.
There's often a lot of excitement when we start a book. We've got all these ideas. And then as we go on, the longer it takes to write, there's this excitement starts to wane. And the book starts to feel like it's heavy. And what can writers do to sort of get over those hump periods where you really are like, oh, why did I decide to do this?
Yes, that is such a common experience, isn't it? There's the peaks and the valleys that come with the writing process. I kind of liken it to running a marathon or climbing Mount Everest. That's another big one, right? Because the idea of it seems so unbelievably overwhelming. And so you have to do it in phases. You have to do it, a mile at a time, a base camp at a time. I think the important thing to do is when you start, understanding that you are going to reach that valley where it's going to feel like a chore to sit down, as you called, bum glued in that chair. It's going to be a chore. It's not going to be something that you're looking forward to. One of the things that I tell my authors to do is to set ways to celebrate the small movements that they're making, to break it up into more attainable segments of writing, and then to celebrate once you achieve those goals. You have to take a break from it as well. If you write the first part and it's maybe the first 6 chapters of the book and you're starting to feel yourself slump into that valley, to take a break, to step away, to get outside, to go find something else that inspires you in some way. If you're a runner, go out and make sure you're still running. Lean into those hobbies that fill you with inspiration and creativity, whether it's music, whether it's painting, drawing, whatever that looks like, we sometimes have to find inspiration from places outside of the book. And so we need to have that understanding and to seek them.
Yeah, those breaks are really, really important, as long as they don't get too long.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to put it aside and get back to it. And then I've recently had an author who took 20 years to write a book. Kudos that they finished it, but I don't know it should have taken that long.
Well, just like with exercising, right? If you're an avid, let's go back to runner, and you take a week off, they say a week off is like taking off a full month. It takes you a full month to get back to where you were before that. And so writing is kind of the same way. I would recommend a week, but make sure that you come back to it. And maybe that commitment to yourself is by setting a calendar reminder in your phone and you're making an appointment with yourself. Because if you think of it this way, if you view your book and completing your book as you doing something for yourself, for your future self, for you incorporating some type of goal and achievement that is going to professionally move you forward in a way to achieve a new level of, let's say you're looking to step into more public speaking opportunities. It's an investment and a commitment into yourself. So if you think of it that way and you make time on your calendar and you commit to it, it really comes down to that, to committing to completion and
Yeah.
to the goals that you've set.
Yeah. I mean, that commitment to yourself, which is often really hard because you put other people in front of yourself. I'm speaking from experience that often other people's, you get involved with a project and that takes over. Also, the thought, though, that your book is going to be of service to somebody else, your target audience. Also, maybe focusing on that solution, that incredible, solution, method, system that you know about and that you want to share with them.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on that?
I completely agree with you. When I start working with a new author, we always start with what are the 3 things that need to happen for this to have been worth it? For your time, for your financial investment that you're putting into it. What 3 things need to happen when that book goes out into the world for it to be worth it? Every single one of them, their number one goal is for it to make a difference in somebody else's life. It's always an act of service. I often share this incredible story. I always recommend to my authors that they get uncomfortable as often as they can. Because if you think of that process of writing a book, you're really stepping into that uncomfortable space. I had signed up for this TEDx coaching workshop, and the coach shared a personal story of when he gave his first TEDx. And if you think about this, your book is essentially a version of that TEDx, right? It's sharing a message that goes out into the world for purpose, for meaning, for some form of mission. And his first TEDx he did when he was 19 years old. I cannot even imagine being 19 years old and standing on a TEDx stage. I don't know if I could have done it. And he said that the reason why he was able to was his whole intention was to build a school in a small village in Africa. And so he got on that stage and he shared how through the education of young girls, we're able to lift villages, to lift countries, right? And there's this trickle effect as to how educating young girls raises the economic growth of full countries. And he moved his audience so deeply that he built not 1, but 3 schools.
Wow.
And if we think of it that way, our books have the power to do that. And so
Mm.
you're right. It always stems from that space. And so when you think of what those professional goals are, it's because those professional goals are going to create opportunities to bring that message to an even larger platform.
Yes. I mean, that's an astounding story. And it gave me goosebumps listening to you share it because that I'd not heard. And you're right. The power of not only the spoken word, but the written word, and your book comes out as you speaking, because speaking, training, coaching, those are incredibly powerful ways in which you can get your thoughts, your feelings, your inspiration and motivation to others. So, yes, what a great story.
Mhm.
Wonderful. What mistakes do you find that authors make?
That's a really good question. I would say that when they're in the initial stage of writing their rough draft, of going over their chapter too many times, what I say is the very first draft of our chapter is going to be in its most true, most raw, most authentic voice. Every single time we go back and we revise it, we unintentionally water down our message. What I call, we turn our book into a people pleaser because we're wondering, did I say that the right way? Maybe I shouldn't share that. Maybe I need to change this over here. Let's move this. And the message ends up coming out completely different every time we go back through. Now, it's different if we're going to go back and we're going to check where we missed those commas. And maybe this should be a semicolon, but that's not what we do. We're going back through because we're second guessing ourselves. That inner critic is chattering in our ear and we're listening to it. What I always recommend is when you're done with that rough draft, and it's called rough for a reason. It is rough, right? There is nothing polished about that initial draft, and that's okay. Once it's complete, move it over into a completed chapter folder and don't touch it again until you've finished your very last chapter.
Those are wise words because you're right. I mean, until I learned that it was okay to do this sort of rough draft, I think very many authors think that the greats of the greats just sat down and wrote War and Peace or whatever book that they wrote, that they just sat down and wrote it. But the truth is, and I think Hemingway talks about this, is that I think he calls it the dirty draft. It's just like the first time you're just getting those thoughts out there, and then you start going in and, well, maybe this thought should go over here. And you start moving things around and then writing it in a way that is more like what you want it to be. Yes, not going in and, I mean, I love wordsmithing, and that is the worst thing you can do, especially in the beginning. Maybe at the end, but not in the beginning.
Absolutely. I think and if I can, I'd like to add a number two. I think the second mistake is writing in a voice that's not yours. Writing in a voice that you think you should be writing in. And I love that you said Hemingway because that's always an example. We have this idea of this Hemingway-esque voice of how our words are supposed to flow a certain way. And what ends up happening is the message comes out and it's completely missing the mark. It's not in alignment with who we are, what we're trying to say, or our brand. And when you think of it this way, a book is your brand. It's your personal brand. So if you are to put your book out there into the world in a voice that does not belong to you, you are doing yourself and the world a disservice. The world wants to hear what you have to say in your way, in your voice. Write your book the way that you talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this whole idea of AI comes in, that people are sitting down and they're saying, oh, well, I can produce a book in a weekend or just very quickly through with AI. But that goes to the fact that this is not your voice. This is AI's voice. You want it to be you. So that's against the people who think that they can just churn something out so easily. Kristin, this is a great segue for you to share how our listeners can find out more about you and the services you offer.
Absolutely. So we offer book coaching and we do publishing. We're in the process of launching a few platforms that are going to provide additional tools to authors. I would advise you listeners to check out ephouse.co, and we're going to be launching those platforms from that website.
Beautiful. Yes, and go check it out. They're a superb group, listeners. And Kristin, as you know, we always have our guests leave our listeners with a golden nugget. You've given us so many, so I'm just going to ask you for one more to share with them. What words of wisdom would you like to leave them with?
I would say that when we think of the message that we most want to be putting out in the world, I've had authors tell me that they have probably 25 books in them that they can write, and they can't decide what book they should write. I'm myself guilty of that. I think I have probably 5 different manuscripts that I've written. When you think of the first book or the second book that you want to write out, that you want to be writing, what most represents the legacy that you're looking to leave? Think about that long-term mark that you want to be leaving on the world. What do you most want to be remembered for? Your number one thing is going to be your first book. The second thing you most want to be known for is going to be your second book.
I love that prioritization, because I've had that same question. You're right, that they've got so many ideas for books in their mind, and it's like, okay, where should I start? I want to do this one versus that one. I said, where's your passion? What is it, as you said, that you most want to put out there? That's the one you should begin with. So, yes, I love it. Thank you. This has been amazing, Kristin. So thrilled that we got you on the show. And listeners, if your book isn't selling the way you wanted or expected to, let's you and I jump on a quick call together to brainstorm ways to ramp up those sales, because you've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy, and it's time you got the return you were hoping for. So go to bookmarketingbrainstorm.com to schedule your free call. And in the meantime, I hope this powerful interview sparks some ideas you can use to sell more books. Until next week, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.